Have you ever doom scrolled for hours? Or ate so much junk food that you felt sick? Or watched the whole season of your series in one go? I think that at least one of those things happened to the majority of us. They are the perfect examples of overindulging in short-term pleasures. And that's exactly what we're gonna be talking about today, because it is so easy to reach short-term pleasures in today's world, and it's destroying us. It's destroying our passion, who we are, how we think, and that's why it's important to speak about it. If you overindulge in all those small pleasures, short-term pleasures, you have bad mood. You go down and down and down. You don't feel replenished. There is no joy coming your way. You are just doing those habits more and more. The problem is that once you overfried yourself with all those short-term pleasures, you're in a rut. You feel horrible. There's no energy. You feel like you cannot do any sort of good thing for yourself. You just don't feel willing to do whatever for yourself. So step number one that I would do if I would be in a complete rut, it would be to define the number one bad habit. Because I think that so many times we try to just turn our life around. It's like this massive step, like I'm just gonna be different. In a month I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be a completely different person. For the majority of the people, what they would feel after setting such a goal, it's like going from 1 to 100. It's not sustainable. You get so overwhelmed, like, oh my God, there's like a whole month Everest in front of me. Then you get overstimulated, you get overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, all those steps, it just seems too difficult. You give up after a week. That's exactly why so many people give up after going to the gym for 1 week after New Year's resolutions. Because they come into the gym, they promise themselves that they're gonna work out 7 days a week. They start with the most difficult workout they ever seen. They joined like an extreme class and they drop out. Why? Because they started doing something 100% on 100 when it comes to level, when they were on 1. It's too big of a jump. So you need to set a priority. What is the thing that if you would cancel it out of your life, it would change your life the most? The step number 2, what I would do is to be accountable and to identify. How many hours per day do you scroll? Is it 3 hours? Is it 5 hours? And the second thing is to identify. You need to identify the source. Why do you do it? For example, in this case, you come back from work, you are drained, you just don't feel like nothing, you just want to chill, so what do? You take your phone, you scroll, because you feel like you have no energy whatsoever to do nothing. Here, the reason why the person scrolled is because they felt tired. But there are different ways how to handle yourself when you're tired or you feel overstimulated. So you want to kind of like close yourself off. You take your phone, you scroll. So it's important to identify why you do that behavior. Step number 3, make the habit smaller. And here I would say 2 things, right? So first one is exchange evil for less evil. So let's say if you have social media, you're doing the scrolling, right? What does it give you? It's audio, it's visual, you are moving something with your finger, it's very colorful. How can you downgrade it? How can you still be hooked onto something but not have the full experience? Let's say you scroll for 3 hours and then instead of stopping completely and having this urge and then relapsing and going back to it, you take your headphones, you set on some YouTube videos and you listen for 3 hours, and you can do chores, you can just sit somewhere, but you don't have the visual aspect. Then from there, you can listen to podcasts that will teach you something for 2 hours. At least it gives you something. Or you can listen to audiobooks. And then you can, for example, listen to music to occupy your brain. And then you put it down and down and down. But it's obviously much easier to get the time down on listening to music than scrolling on social media. A second way, and I would actually kind of combine those two, a small, tiny steps. to decrease the habit, aka lowering the dose. If you're scrolling for 3 hours straight, how about you would scroll for 2 hours 50 minutes, and then the next week 2 hours 40 minutes, and then 2:30? It seems like, okay, but I am still scrolling for 2.5 hours. And that's true. However, how many times did you start some kind of journey? As going to the gym, eating healthy, reading more books, scrolling less, eating less junk food. And how long were you actually able to sustain it? It's exactly as we spoke about it at the beginning. You take too big of a chunk to complete. It seems enormous, overwhelming. A lot of time it's very painful, and then you don't want to do it. But if you lower the dose little by little, there is much more possibility that you're gonna stick to lowering to it. Because it would be amazing if you would go from 3 hours of scrolling to nothing. That's great. If it works for you, if it's sustainable, this is like a huge cut in your life. Great. But I think that with majority of the people, it would just end up with you going back to the habit, doing maybe even more, and then in the next 4-5 months, whatever the time would be for you, you're like, oh damn, I really want to get rid of this bad habit, and you do this big jump again, then you stick to it for a week, and then you give up again, and then again in 5 months, you do a big step, then you give up on it in a week. But if completely from the beginning, you would lower it little by little, then you would actually stick to it, and in the year, you would slowly get to zero, to nothing. You would so get used to not being on social media and scrolling all the time that it would just feel normal. You would never do this big jump that would feel super painful, and you have the success. But if you do this massive jump and then you give up, and then you do massive jump and give up, and again and again and again, then it can happen that in 3 years you are at the same place, and maybe even worse, and you did not get better because you felt like making small steps takes too long. But in fact, making small steps for very long can actually bring much more benefit than making a huge jump and not sticking to it. In fact, it would bring much more benefit. The question is, what is so easy, so achievable goal that you're 100% certain that you would reach it? If you scroll for 3 hours, would it be possible for you to shorten it by 5 minutes? Because when you always set a goal that is making you better, but it's always just by little, so that you can really jump it, you build confidence. And guess what? If you manage to stick to what you said you're gonna do, so scrolling for 2 hours 55 minutes, you're scrolling 5 minutes less, you completed it, you gain confidence, and the next week you are pumped. You're like, I did it, let's do 5 minutes again. And next thing you know, you're able to keep the scrolling time so low that you are not addicted anymore. So you can kind of combine those two methods to replace and to lower by very, very small achievable steps. You know, in order to have a very high quality of life, you have to know yourself. And in order to know yourself, you have to experience stillness. And if every single time when you feel discomfort, you go for your phone, you eat the junk food, you watch the TV, you're not giving yourself space to getting to know yourself, because your emotions are telling you what you need. It's not something bad. It's not something that you should be ashamed of. If you grow as a person, it doesn't mean that negative emotions will just evaporate. That's not how it works. You still have them. You just deal with them in a much healthier way. And by fulfilling the need, by doing something that is actually beneficial to you, that's also another thing that can uplift you. That's the positive side of the things. You try to lower the negative pleasures and uplift the habits that will actually make you feel very good. So for example, let's say this time I wouldn't plan on going to the gym, just going home after work. I'm overstimulated, tired. I'm just like, ugh, everything is just feeling bad. What can I do? I can lay in my bed, I can scroll. How is it gonna make me feel? Drained, miserable. I'm gonna be comparing myself to other people. I'm gonna think that everyone is living their best life, and because I'm already in a bad mood, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, my life just sucks, whatever, I guess I'm just gonna give up. This is something that I used to do. If you don't do this, and if you sit in stillness for a little bit, and you will feel in your brain, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I just don't feel like doing nothing today. Everything sucks. I feel so bad. This is wrong. This is a bad day. What is it telling you? That you are overstimulated. You need some antidote to it. You need calmness. What can you do to seek calmness? You can meditate. You can go for a walk. You can sit in the garden. Like when you want some stillness, seek nature. The thing is, you know, it sounds super boring and super basic. But are you really doing this, you know? When you feel overstimulated, are you seeking nature or are you seeking your phone? And it's gonna make such a difference because once you go for a walk, once you go into nature, once you listen to the sound of the leaves, once you see the sunshine, once you're walking around and moving your body, the emotions that you have will slowly like wash off from you. This overstimulation, this unstillness, and you will replenish yourself with some good energy. And then guess what? A lot of times when I come back from work and I'm overstimulated and I go for the walk, I spend time in the garden, I just read with no device, no music, no nothing, guess what? I actually replenish myself and then I feel like doing some things. Then I go cooking, for example, which I really enjoy. But if I would scroll, I feel nothing. I feel drained. I feel horrible. I feel even worse about myself. And then the next day, if I wake up after scrolling after work, I don't feel replenished. The energy is not there. It's just not there. But if I go walking after being overstimulated from work, the next day I feel much better. It's like a pattern that I see in myself. And it really, really works. Just one evening of doing something that is replenishing you, and it can change so much how your next day is gonna go. The last thing I would like to mention is obviously good habits. Same as with getting rid of the bad habit, build it up slowly. What is the easiest thing that you can do when it comes to your exercise that is so reachable you will 100% reach it? 5 minutes of walking every single day after work, go. You completed it, you were consistent, amazing, make it higher. You want to go to the gym 1 time a week, great. Is it more than what it used to be? And then make it higher and higher and higher, so that you would sustain it. That's it, you know? That's how you live every single day. That's how your life will evolve. It's not like this grand, massive action. You need to put in the work every single day through small steps. And that's what matters. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, for staying. If you like it, give it a like and let us all know what is your short-term pleasure, number 1. What do you indulge in very often that you want to get rid of? Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!